When I was a young boy living in Australia, I was a very light sleeper. Very sensitive too. If someone entered my room whilst I was asleep, they would wake me up, even if they were trying to be quiet. I would also somehow know whether it was my mum or dad or one of my two sisters. I mean, as soon as I woke up, I would know exactly which family member was in my room. Twice I was woken in the middle of the night, and my gift failed me. I don't recall how young I was at the time, but I was easily under 10 years of age. The first time I woke up and opened my eyes, I was looking straight into the face of a figure leaning over me. I say face because it was leaning over me, but truth be told, I couldn't see a face or make out any distinguishing features at all. It was just a dark shape leaning over my bed. I do not believe it was my father, although he was a big man and this figure leaning over me was large as well. It just didn't feel like my father. My reaction at finding a stranger leaning over me in the middle of the night was immediate and frantic. I grabbed my teddy bear, yanked the covers over my head, and I burrowed down to the foot of my bed. If it had been my father checking on me, I'd like to think he would have responded to this reaction by letting me know it was him and seeking to calm me down. But there was no such fatherly reassurances that night. I distinctly remember the next morning asking my mum if she or dad had come into my room to check on me. I know they used to do that, but it was never anything more than opening my door and peeking in, which would still wake me up. This was someone who had entered my room and been leaning over me with their face barely a foot or so from mine. And they hadn't been a family member. A year or two later, I'm unclear on my exact age at the time. I'm 38 now, so we're going back probably a good 30 years or so. This night, I was again awoken in the middle of the night. When I woke up, I could sense something standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me. Again, if either of my parents had been checking on me, they would have done nothing more than popped their head in the door. But this thing was standing at the foot of my bed, and it didn't feel right. Oddly enough, despite there being a street light right outside my bedroom window, and despite having excellent night vision, my room was pitch black and I couldn't see a thing. But I knew someone was there in the darkness. I could feel them, and it terrified me. I have since spoken with other people who have had visitors in the night, people I personally know and trust, and they've all been able to describe their visitor, their features, clothing, everything. They've also told me that while they were a little disturbed to wake up and find someone watching over them, that they also felt calm and at peace. Like somehow they knew their visitor meant them no harm. My midnight visitors were dark apparitions that scared me half to death. I was never harmed, but these were not peaceful experiences. Not at all.
I live in Queensland, Australia, in a small suburb, about 20 minutes from the ocean. Around 8 years ago, my grandmother decided that she wanted to live closer to us and bought the house next door. I was around 6 or 7 at the time. The house had 4 bedrooms, and they were separated by the kitchen and living area. There was a small hallway, which the main bedroom and second bedroom were down, and the other 2 bedrooms came off the living room. When my parents went away, I would always stay with my grandma. I never liked staying there and asked if instead of sleeping in my bedroom, could I sleep on the couch? My grandma used to always wait until she thought I was asleep and then move me into the bedroom. I could never sleep in there, no matter how hard I tried. I used to end up staying awake the whole night waiting for the sun to come up. One night, when I finally did get to sleep, something woke me up. I don't know what it was, but when I looked at the doorway, I saw the dark shadow of what looked like a tall, thin man. I pulled the blankets up over my head and stayed like that until I finally went back to sleep. My grandmother moved out of that house several years later and is now living with us. I had convinced myself that what I had seen was my imagination, and I hadn't thought about it for years. So when my cousin came to stay, she's 27, she and I were talking about ghosts and other things when she brought up my grandmother's old house. She told me the following story. She had been sleeping in the main bedroom, which, for some reason, my grandmother had given her to stay in. My grandmother and aunt, my cousin's mum, were down the other end of the house. My cousin woke up, needing to go to the bathroom. She didn't like to use the bathroom that connected to the main bedroom because she found it creepy, so she walked down to the other end of the house. When she was walking back from the bathroom, she thought she heard shuffling footsteps on the carpet behind her, but when she turned around, there was no one there. She got back into bed and turned over. She then said she had a strange feeling, so she rolled onto her back to find someone standing at the foot of her bed. She couldn't see them very clearly in the dark and thought she had woken her mother, so she says, "Sorry if I woke ya." The figure didn't reply. My cousin took a closer look at the person and realised that it was not her mother, nor my grandmother. She put the blankets over her head and screamed as loudly as she could. My grandmother and aunt came running into the bedroom to find it empty. When my cousin told them what happened, they thought that there was an intruder in the house. So they searched the whole house and checked the doors and windows, but found no one, or any signs of forced entry. Before I told my cousin what I had seen, I asked her what this figure looked like. She said it was a tall, thin man. I told my mother of both mine and my cousin's experience, and she told me that a man had committed suicide in the garage of the house. I never told my cousin that though, because my mum told me that it would scare her too much. I don't think the ghost wished us any harm either. I think it was just his way of letting us know that he was there.
This didn't happen to me, but one of my mum's best mate's daughter. This happened in Cygnet, Tasmania. This girl, Jenny, was in bed one night and heard these noises out in the lounge room. So, Jenny went out to have a look, but there was nothing there. She lived with only her mum, but her mum was still sound asleep in her bed. The next few nights, the same thing was happening, but still, nobody there. Jenny told her mum, but her mum thought that she was just imagining things. So that night, before she went to bed, Jenny got out a box of cornflakes and a bag of flour. She spread them all over the lounge room where she was hearing the noises. As she was laying in bed, she heard a crunch. She was scared to go out, so she waited until morning. When she walked out, the cornflakes were all broken up. There were footprints, bare feet, printed in the flour. The strange thing was, the footprints started in the middle of the room and ended in the middle of the room. There was no way that these footprints could be her or her mum, because they didn't start or end anywhere. After that, the noises did stop and everything went back to normal. But she still has nightmares about it, even now.
This story happened when I was around 6 or 7 years old. I was born in Portugal, but my nationality is Timorese Chinese, and we moved to Australia when I was just 4. Obviously, nothing's been going on since. But one night, I was sleepwalking. When you sleepwalk, you don't know you're doing it, right? Well, I did. I was actually trying to control my own body to go back to bed, but it wouldn't. I was so scared. But then I wasn't. I don't know, I was 6, so I guess I really didn't care. I ended up going to the bathroom, and since I was small, I couldn't see the mirror, or my own reflection for that matter. I could only see the tip of my head, and the only way to see my face was if I stood up on the stool provided. I looked up at the mirror. I walked back out and around the house, and that's all I remembered. I ended up going to the bathroom again and looked up at the mirror. There was the most hideous thing I had ever seen. White, pale, freaky, I don't know. But it reached its hand out. I remember I screamed and passed out, and I ended up going into my parents' room. Here's the freaky part. My mum didn't tell me this, but when we were at my grandma's house, I overheard my mum talking about the incident to my aunties. 4 of them. I have 6 aunties and 7 uncles, all from the same grandma. I know, big. What I heard freaked me out, which at that time caused me to not be able to sleep by myself for 4 years and not be able to look into mirrors during the night. Even now, I can't even look in a mirror at night. When my mum came in to get me, she saw a shadow figure over my body. She apparently yelled for my dad and grabbed me. But what made her freak out even more was that my eyes were open and my face was white as snow. If I ask her about the incident, she'll just ignore me or tell me to shut up. Anyway, thanks for listening.
My encounter took place at a farmhouse in Lamington National Park, Queensland, Australia. The farmhouse is very old, around 100 years old, I think, and it was previously owned by the O'Reilly family, one of whom is famous for his rescue of the survivors of a crashed plane. The house is regularly rented out to holiday stayers, and I have stayed there on several occasions. On my last of these, several years ago, I swear I saw something, which I can only guess was a ghost. As anyone who has ever been in the country will know, it gets very dark at night. This, plus the layout of the house, made this a great place to play hide and seek in the dark. I was the seeker, and I decided to search in the main bedroom. There was a fire in the room opposite, so I could vaguely make out the contents of the room. However, as I entered, I suddenly stopped as, directly in front of me, a pitch-black shape appeared out of thin air. I cannot specifically describe the shape, as it didn't seem to have a distinct edge and it seemed to be constantly changing. It was, however, roughly my height and width. The thing itself, it was completely pitch black. Despite the fire behind me, I could make it out. I could also make out the contents of the room on either side of this thing, almost as quickly as it appeared. A very dark red point of light, where I imagine its right eye would have been, appeared and began to glow brighter. At this point, I felt no fear, merely surprise and confusion. at its sudden and unexpected appearance. I had never seen anything like this before. I did, however, decide that I no longer wanted to enter that room, and so I quickly walked backwards out of there. As I did so, the red eye began to fade again, and the entire thing vanished. After having explored the rest of the house and finding all but one of the hiders, I decided that it was time to search the main bedroom again. This time, no strange shape challenged me, and I quickly found that the last hider was on top of the wardrobe. Thinking that what I had seen might have possibly been him, I asked if he had been there the entire game, to which he said he had. It was also obvious that there could have been no way for him to have gotten up or down off that wardrobe without making enough noise for me to hear him from anywhere else in the house. It is only a small house, but it is very cluttered and very rickety. The floor creaks at every step. I don't know what it is I saw that night, and I honestly have no interest in finding out. I just wanted to share my experience with others. It was strange, and it makes a great campfire story.
This is my first and only experience with the unexplainable. It happened Christmas of '08 when I was living with a couple of mates. I was living at my mate's house with his mum, little sister, and my boyfriend, who would have regular parties and mates over very often. We would sit up and tell scary stories while having a few drinks and chilling out. When my mate's mum, also known as Auntie D, overheard our stories, she told us one of the ghosts who haunted the very house we were in. I'm a very open-minded person and listened in for several hours. I love the thrill of being scared. Later that night, when the party had died down a little, I was very tired and a little bit drunk, so I went to crash in my room. My boyfriend staying up with mates, continuing to drink. I went into the room, didn't even bother to change into my PJs, and curled up under the blanket. I was just beginning to doze off when I heard the bedroom door, which I'd left slightly ajar, fling open. I didn't open my eyes, thinking it was my boyfriend coming to bed. I could hear footsteps shuffling on the carpet, and clothes and other mess on the floor being pushed around. Then I felt the bed dint in, as if my boyfriend were climbing into bed beside me. Then I felt his arm come over me to hug me. I turned to hug him back, but there was no one there at all. At first, I brushed it off, thinking I was a bit too drunk. I was just beginning to doze off again when I heard the shuffling on the carpet and clothes being moved. So I opened my eyes, but couldn't see anything. I looked around the room, following the sound of the shuffling until it was right next to the bed. I kept watching, waiting for someone or something to appear, when the bed began to dint in again. This time, I could actually see someone was sitting there, watching me watch them. That's when I got up and ran into the lounge room. Everyone was asleep by then, and my boyfriend was passed out on the lounge. So I curled up next to him and slept there for the rest of the night. When I woke up the following morning and told everyone what had happened, some of my mates didn't believe me, but Auntie D said I was visited by one of the resident ghosts. She told me it must have been the man. She said it must have been the male ghost because he was a lot calmer than the female spirit who would throw things around at night and force you to walk through her in the hallway. I haven't had any experiences since then, but I would love to see an apparition. In my previous story, I told of the experience I had with the spirit of a man in my room when I was living with friends over Christmas of 2008. Well, my mates and I thought it would be pretty cool if we tried a Ouija board to find out who he is and why he can't or won't leave. I've played with Ouija before, but with no results, or I've had friends who were pushing the glass, So I jumped on the internet, read about the topic to find the telltale signs of bad spirits, what questions to ask, and what not to ask, and also how to close a session properly. All we needed then was a Ouija board. So yet again, I resorted to the internet, found a Parker Brothers board, printed and laminated it. We got some white candles, some sage and frankincense. Could not find a pure silver coin though, but we went ahead anyway. Auntie D, my friend's mum, warned us not to do it anywhere in or around her house, as there is a bad spirit attached to her witch board, and she did not want any more negative energy drawn to the house. But, being the defiant young adults we are, we simply snuck out to the garage and proceeded to go ahead with it there. There were 4 of us all up. Me, Trevor, who lives there and is very in touch with the other side and can see spirits when there is a lot of energy. Joseph, who'd just come back from the Torres Strait Islands and witnessed a lot of black magic. And my younger friend Beth, who was going through trial exams and trying to decide what to do with her life. We decided Beth would do the talking, as she had the most questions. Trev and Joseph rocked off with scissors, paper and rock to see who would be the scribe. We set the board up, facing Beth, and placed 3 white candles around the outside of the board. 1 in front of the 3 of us touching the board. We opened by saying a non-religious prayer I found on the internet, with most of the instructions on how to play. I was expecting absolutely nothing at all to happen, as like my previous sessions. After we said the prayer, we asked if any of the spirits residing in the house that wished to communicate with us. We waited about 1 to 2 minutes, and just as we were about to ask it again, it shot across the table to yes, so fast that if one of the 3 of us were pushing or pulling it, it would have flipped the glass just because of how close to the edge our fingers were. Next, we asked if it was a good spirit. Straight away, the glass began to move to no. It's like it was hesitating, and it didn't want us to know it was bad or evil. I said we had to close the session, as I did not want to communicate with an evil spirit. So we said goodbye. It slowly moved to goodbye. We sat there, kind of mind blown in silence for about 15 minutes, before Joseph said, "Who cares? Nothing happened. Let's try again." We placed our fingers back on the glass, and just as Beth went to read the first line of the prayer, the glass jolted, then began moving very fast towards Joseph, and began to spell HFMVST. The ST was together because the glass landed over on the 2 letters. I got a really bad eerie feeling from this, and it kind of surprised everyone when I suddenly blurted out, "We need to close the board now and get the fuck out of here." But as I said that, it scared Joseph and he jumped and took his fingers off the glass, thinking I'd seen something. He was about to run. I yelled at him to put his fingers back down and he did. "We don't want to talk anymore, we're saying goodbye." But the glass would not go to goodbye. It continued to spell HFMVST over and over again. So I said goodbye in a strong voice. We all forced the glass to goodbye. My heart was racing after that. As I looked over to Trevor, he said we need to leave the garage now. When I asked him why, he just pointed to the back of the garage. And as I turned my head to look, I saw a black shadow figure dart behind some storage boxes. That scared me senseless, and I ran into the house. We all just sat there trying to describe to each other the different feelings we all had. Just trying to clarify what happened. This happened around a month ago now, and since I've been back in there, there's a presence in the front yard that comes out of the garage. Trevor has seen a man pacing back and forth along the window, and Joseph has caught him peering in at him, just watching us. I've seen flashes like shadows dart across the window, but nothing to the detail of Trev and Jose. The most random thing. We had a friend come for a visit and stay the night. She slept on the mattress in the lounge room just below the front window, and she woke up during the night to tapping on the window. When she looked out the window, she saw a white, misty form of a person just standing at the door, like they were waiting to be let in. Now, she didn't know about our Ouija board or the presence out the front. Why he or it decided to show itself to her, we don't know. And the front door will just open at random when there's no breeze. It has even opened in front of Beth and I when it was deadlocked. I wonder what he wants. Since my last story, some weird stuff has been happening to me and my friend Beth. Beth's been seeing shadow people and having weird dreams. The other day, when she was home alone playing Farmtown on Facebook, a single blind in the lounge room began tapping on the glass door, with all the windows in the vicinity closed. There's no air conditioning and the fan was not on. I have seen these shadow people, though not as often as Beth, nor to the detail in which she's seen. I only see flashes, like they're running past, yet Beth has seen them walking around her apartment. This may be because she played with Ouija board more frequently than me and got contact from a trickster named Kate, who used to be a ballet dancer and enjoys tricking people and hiding things. The scariest thing that's happened to me since we played with the Ouija board at Trev's was about a month after the fact. It was the night after a big night in town. We were all worn out from partying the night before, but there was another party around the corner that Trev and Joseph went to, and Sean and I stayed back to get some rest. It would have been around 12 a.m. when Trev returned from the party. He woke us up, we had a cigarette with him, and went back to bed. Now by 3 a.m, I was dead to the world in a deep sleep, cuddled up next to my boyfriend, when all of a sudden, it was like someone had put their lips right up to my ear, so they almost touched my ear, and began to whisper really loud and fast. I was startled awake and jumped up looking around for anyone who could possibly have done it. I couldn't make out exactly what it was that they said. It was so quick and really loud. At first I thought it was Joseph, because he does this thing where he sneaks up on you and he'll whisper, "Kiss, kiss," really fast in your ear. But it couldn't have been him, as he wasn't home from the party yet. So I got up and did a quick check of the house just to make sure. The whole time I was up though, I felt like somebody was watching me. Yet everyone was asleep or not home yet. I woke up my boyfriend and told him what had happened. He just mumbles to go back to sleep, so I seriously doubt it could have been him. Plus, it was the ear that was facing away from him and towards the front door. I tried going back to sleep, but I couldn't. Also, my ear was throbbing, like as if someone had set off an air horn next to it. It could have been a resident ghost, or the one out the front. Did he find a way in? So if you've read or heard my other stories, you would be familiar with the man that resides in my old bedroom at Trev's house. My boyfriend and I moved out of there earlier this year, and we moved in with my mum. We do still stay there fairly often, as it's like a second home to me. And even though creepy things have happened there, I always feel like I belong when I'm there. My old room is now Trev's, and I recently gave him my waterbed because my mum wouldn't let me set it up at hers. He was telling us that since he's had the waterbed in there, there has been more activity. Trev's described it as, when he's almost asleep, the bed will begin to ripple, like someone is at the foot of the bed, pushing up and down, making the bed all wavy. Then it will lay on the bed as the water will dip down and cause him to roll into it. Now he sleeps by himself, by the way. It has also been pulling his hair and touching his arm. He even sees the indents in his skin, like when you scratch yourself. But he's left with no actual physical marks. It was the night after Trev's 21st. We were all worn out, tired, and very hungover. My boyfriend and I were going to crash in the lounge room. Trev offered my boyfriend and I his bed that night, as he wanted to crash in the lounge room to watch a late movie. My boyfriend and I, knowing what has happened in the room previously, still took him up on the offer. Now, ever since my first experience in the room, I've noticed that the atmosphere in there is a lot thicker, and the air in the room seems to have a white tinge to it. And it's not cigarette smoke, We're not allowed to smoke in the bedrooms. Although, the room does get good air circulation. Anyway, back to the story. Like majority of young couples, we didn't go straight to sleep. We fooled around for a bit. It would have been around 11:30 p.m. before we even began to doze off, when all of a sudden, there was this tapping on the windowsill. We both laid still, just listening. Then the clothes on the floor began to move like someone was kicking them out of the way to get around, and the familiar shuffling sound on the carpet. I began to get creeped out, but not as much as before because I wasn't alone this time. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but couldn't because I had this uneasy feeling of being watched the whole time. All of a sudden, the shuffling was right next to me. This made me jump and I startled my boyfriend. So I'm looking around and I see this man. I can make out this darker body-shaped shadow standing just on the outside of the cupboard door. It had to have been at least 6 foot high and thick, as I could not see the white chest of drawers in the cupboard, which are usually visible even in the dark, being that they're white. I told my boyfriend that I'm going to sleep in the lounge room and that he should come with me. Trev was still up and he just looked at us and said, "He's there, eh?" We just looked at each other and were like, "Yeah, not sleeping in there tonight."